Okay. If it's not 100% perfect, that's okay. Okay. Hi, Veronica.
Hi.
Tell me about yourself, where you're from, where you were raised, etc.
I was born in California, but I moved up to Washington State shortly after, so I was like 2. I was raised in the town of Pullman, Washington, home of the Cougars, and then I also went to school there. And then I ended up living in Switzerland for a year as an au pair, and then deciding to move to Colorado because my roommate wanted to.
Cool. How long have you been at South?
I've been at South for 5 years. I started as an AmeriCorps member and then a para, and through those couple years I figured out that I wanted to stay at South, and so I became a teacher my 3rd year here.
Okay, and what was your path in order to receive your teaching certification?
Like I said, I started with AmeriCorps. They placed me here at the school. I worked with a social worker, and then I became a para, and while I was doing that, I talked to our principal at that time, who was Dr. Kristen Waters, and she was talking to me about alternative pathways to get my licensure. I already had a degree from Washington State in communication and music and journalism, and so I joined a program called Denver Teach Today. And through them, I was able to get my initial teaching license. I taught summer school at a middle school, and then I started teaching here at South.
Cool. How do you like it so far?
I love it. I love South, and I love teaching.
So tell me a little bit more about, so you've been teaching how many years exactly?
3 years.
3 years. And tell me a little bit more about your experience teaching.
It's been really fun. It was nerve-wracking my first year, but going into it, I knew it my first year. Poor kids, I'll figure things out while we're going. I had a really good mentor here, kind of showing me ways to be a better teacher and what to do. Her name was Megan Lawson, and she was heading up our algebra team, which I was teaching, and so she really helped guide me in knowing the conceptual parts of what the students should be learning and helping them get the basics done as well. And then also, just being part of the coaching staff at South has helped me be more engaged at the school, and so I take a lot of pride at working at South, coaching at South, and the kids really mean a lot to me here.
And what do you teach specifically?
The first couple of years I taught just Algebra 1, and then this year I have ELA Algebra, so ELA is for our English language learners, and then I also have intervention math, so the students who scored or by request have been offered a second math option to help them with their algebra classes.
Cool. Can you tell me a little bit about your philosophy of teaching and how things are going so far this year?
I'm not sure if I have quite a philosophy figured out for teaching. I like to make sure that my students are engaged. One of the biggest parts that I try to have is a classroom culture, that they're safe learning and that they're at least trying something. I tell them the worst thing I hate is when kids are lazy. So as long as you're trying to get the work done and you're trying to learn and advocating for yourself, then you will be able to pass my class. So I want them to attempt the work. I know that math a lot of people can struggle with, especially those in the intervention class. So I'm trying to make it applicable to their life, but also just help them to persevere through it.
And have you had an opportunity to take on any leadership positions as a teacher? And if not, is that something that you would like to learn more about or get involved with later on in your career?
So this year and half of last year, I transitioned into the Algebra 1 leader. Last year there's 5 of us teachers, this year there's 4. So what that means is I just help run the common planning, making sure that we're all on the same page, making sure the conceptual issues are all talked about and discussed, and then we're going to start looking at some student data, making sure our students are on track. And I would like to continue to be in leadership positions. I've talked to people about being math department head, and just making sure that we're advocating for ourselves and for our students.
Great. What would be 3 things in your mind of being a successful teacher?
I think being a successful teacher means that your students feel that you have a good relationship, safe relationship with them. I think being a successful teacher is having your students learn, and that can be demonstrated through tests, but also projects, or just when you're working one-on-one with them and you can start seeing them to develop a sense of understanding. And then I think being a successful teacher also entails being able to reflect on your practices. Being successful means I have enough time to be like, okay, what went well, what didn't, and I'm not trying to cram everything in or feel stressed out about it. I have time to think about how the lessons and stuff went.
And why did you want to become a teacher?
I have always taught since I was in high school. I started teaching piano lessons, and just in general, I enjoyed that one-on-one experience. Teaching in a classroom is much different than a one-on-one piano lesson, but when I came here to South, and I think part of the draw for me teaching was the community at South, I just wanted to be in the classroom. I liked helping the kids learn. I thought that with my peppiness that I do a pretty good job of making kids feel engaged. And it's that feeling that you're helping them develop into a skill, or helping them develop a skill. That's the same reason coaching, teaching piano, and teaching in general. I just want to see them grow as a person.
And what is it that you coach?
I coach the JV boys and JV girls soccer.
Awesome. That's fun.
It is.
What keeps you teaching and coming back each year?
Part of it is the school, and then the other part is that I love the teaching aspect of it. I love planning my lessons, looking at their tests and seeing when they do really well, that feeling. And in general, I don't know what else I would be doing. Like they say, some people say you have a calling, and I feel like being a teacher was definitely meant for me.
And can you tell me a little bit about what some of your teaching strategies are specifically that you find effective for students to learn?
Yeah. So I think working in groups and peer helping is one of the biggest strategies that I try to cultivate in my classroom. So a lot of times I find that I might not explain something the same way their peer would, so I do a lot of partner work where they can work together on an assignment, or they both do assignment, but they have a neighbor that they have to ask first before they ask me a question. Or group work in general. I try not to do huge groups, but small groups where they can all help each other. And in the ELA classroom, it's especially helpful because I have so many different languages that if they don't understand something from me, they can explain it to somebody in a different language and understand it that way. So just the peer-on-peer helping.
And how do you determine, especially since you work with a population that might need more support in the classroom, so how do you determine the individual needs of your students? So
we do a couple of just baseline tests with them. The first unit of algebra is supposed to be more review anyways. So for our kids, I try to look at the standards that we're trying to meet and then reevaluate if they can't do it. So like today we were doing graphing and we had to pause in the middle because a lot of our kids didn't know how to scale a graph. So some of it is on the fly, and then beforehand I try to just see what areas they could have misconceptions about and pre-plan ahead for that. We did give a baseline data test this year also, just to kind of see where they at the algebra skills. And for the ELA kids, what I noticed is a lot of them haven't had the background schooling, so things that we take for granted, like being able to add negatives, is a struggle for them. So sometimes we take an extra bit of time to work on that.
And how do you impact student engagement in your classroom?
Like, how do I manage it? Like I said, the biggest thing I like about, or one of the big strengths I think I have teaching is the peer helping. And so I try not to answer questions for the first 10 minutes or try to get them to ask their neighbor. And I think that helps impact the classroom. Can you say the question one more time?
Yes. How do you impact student engagement in class?
Yeah, and I think that they get engaged in the classroom when they are able to work with somebody. And then two, any type of word problems, you throw in their names. And if I can't find someone, I use popsicle sticks where they have to answer, or they can popcorn somebody else so that somebody has to answer and be paying attention at all times. So I try to talk as little as possible in the classroom. So they do a step, and then I pick someone else to do the second step or repeat what they said.
And as a new administrator, learning about the school, how do you feel about the current school climate?
I enjoy the school climate. We'll see how it works out this year. We have a new principal. I think our math department in general is pretty cohesive. I think outside of that, the school tries to have a social aspect where teachers can get to know each other on a more personal level, or coaches can get to know each other on a more personal level. In general, though, I feel safe talking to anyone in my department, and I would feel comfortable approaching an admin as well.
On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest, how would you rate yourself as a teacher?
I mean, I'm pretty a confident person, so I'd probably give myself a 7. I know there's a lot of room to grow, and I have certain areas that I want to be able to grow in, but I do think that I am an effective teacher, and I can continue to work on that.
What do you consider your strengths as a teacher?
I think my classroom management is a huge strength, and as little as that has to do with teaching, it also has everything to do with it, because if you have a great lesson plan but no one's paying attention, it doesn't even matter how hard you put into that. I think the other things I have going for me is like the positive classroom culture, and then also again making sure that my students can, the culture is that you help your neighbor. When you don't know how to do something, you ask your neighbor, and I think that builds the community within the classroom and enables them to ask questions that maybe they're scared to ask me, or they feel easy to approach me because we have a safe, open communication.
And in what areas would you like to grow professionally as a teacher?
One of the ones I'm working on this year is academic language, especially for the ELA, but in general, not dumbing down things, holding the kids to the higher expectation that they don't say the top and the bottom, they say numerator, denominator. They don't say I minus it, they say subtract it, because those little things I think really help add to, do they fully understand it, or are they just repeating things they've heard before? Another thing I'm working on is just the part of differentiation, and I know that's the school goal, but that's something I've been working on and talking to my admin about from the beginning. And it's really hard to try to plan and know where kids are at to make sure they all end up meeting the standard, but different ways to approach it. So that's something I'm always working on, and those are probably the 2 biggest ones.
Okay. And what are the 3 areas of focus in regard to your instruction for the year?
Oh, was that different from the last one?
Yes.
What was the last one then?
So the last one was more professionally, like you as a teacher in your profession. Like, is there certain aspects of, like, what's your long-term plan, I guess, more or less as a teacher?
Okay.
Like, do you want to stay in teaching? Do you, like,
as of right now, I want to stay in teaching. I don't think I want to be admin, but I've only been here for a few years, so that could change. I do want to eventually get my master's. I started it, and then I stopped because I was getting in international relations, which I was interested in, and then I think I'm going to switch and go back to secondary mathematics. So I want to keep bettering myself as a teacher. I don't know if I want to be at the admin level yet or anything in the future.
Cool. And what's one way that we as an admin team can help you grow and improve?
I actually really enjoy the observations. I think that's one of the best ways to help us grow and improve. Maybe not always putting a number on it and making sure that it counts towards your teaching eval, but someone stopping by and saying what they noticed, asking those questions that make me think, yeah, what was the purpose of this? Or giving suggestions. I think that someone looking in and always checking in is very beneficial to help you grow as a person, because they see things that you don't.
And is there anything else you would like to share with me so I can get a good picture of who you are as a teacher and what you want to become?
I mean, I guess eventually I want to be a head varsity coach, but take out some jobs. But I think in general, all of us teachers teach because we love to. And sometimes it gets hard when there's so many red tapes or hoops we have to jump through to prove that we're an effective teacher. Like I said, I love the observations. That'd be great if that was something that people just did on the regular, just to let you know how you're doing. And it gets stressful when you feel like this is part of your evaluation. But
well, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.